Hi there, my name is Nathan, and this is A Human Experience. And today I want to talk about your parent story and what kind of impact that can have on yourself and what kind of impact, obviously, that had on them. So for me, I'm going to be talking about my mum because I was raised by my mum as a single parent. And with my own upbringing, it led me to think about what had affected me, but then I also thought about, okay, what affected my mum? What made my mum the way she is? And I often talk to my partner about this. Like, everyone has certain traits, yeah, certain, sometimes we call it like their level of being on the spectrum, is what we like to say in a way. Just to say that some people are really confident, some people are, have low self esteem, some people are very outgoing, some people are more introverted, as they say, some people are very comical, some people are very academic. Different things come up, passionate about certain things. How does that develop? And that's what led me on to think about this thing that I'm calling your parent story. And it's a kind of exercise that I'd like all of you guys to do if possible, um, or even just as a thought experiment, or if you can delve into that, then think about your parent story. If you can get it from them directly, then brilliant. Um, so for me, yeah, I'm going to be talking about my mum and how I feel her life has had an effect on her that led to the way she was, and that possibly had an effect on me, or definitely had an effect on me. So yeah, I'll start off with my mum's kind of story, just the key events kind of thing. My mum was brought up in Leicester, and she was brought up with her mum and dad, and she had one sister, my auntie, and she was born in 1956. So again, talking about the effects and circumstances, then straight away, if you look at the year your parents were born, you could maybe even type in what was happening around then, obviously, and then years after they were born, to see what was going on. How was the world back then? And that will show you the impact it could have had. So yeah, I know for my mum, like, from that moment she was born, it was not long after the war, in terms of, it's not been a generation or so. It's quite a short time from since the war has passed that she's been born, and she'd probably be in that baby boomer category or towards the end of it. She actually lost her dad at 11 years old, and that to me showed that, wow, she had a major traumatic event, um, loss of a parent at a very young age. And that meant that my grandma, her mum, brought her up as a single parent from that point on. So again, I don't know how that was necessarily looked upon back then, but I can also see, even from my generation, that being a single parent, that is tough, and it creates its own stresses and its own kind of difficulties. So obviously for my grandma, my mum's mum, then she would have been under some pressure or stress, or grief as well, of losing her husband. So yeah, my mum had that to contend with, and her sister was a lot older than her. I think it's around, wow, 15 years, something like that, 15, 16 years older. So my mum would have been growing up, and from what I understand, my auntie would have left home, like, while she was still growing up. So again, she wouldn't have had that kind of sibling support, or she might have felt a bit like, her sister's, gone away, because my auntie got married quite young. And then I'd say certain conversations I've had with my mum about her growing up, I knew that it was quite a interesting time, in terms of, like, she's then growing up in the kind of 60s 70s era of being a young girl and teenager, and where people were coming from colonial Britain. So you got the Caribbean people, you got the Indian people, and they're coming for new opportunities and work. So that kind of created a melting pot for my mum to grow up in. Before my mum actually got with my dad, she had a previous relationship with a guy that, had actually, he was from the Caribbean as well, and he had gone back home to look after his mum, in Antigua. And while looking after his mum, he had got ill and he sadly passed away because at that time, obviously, it was quite expensive to get tickets to go to and from the Caribbean. It wasn't like these all-inclusive package holidays nowadays. I mean, even now, Caribbean's hard to get to, but or expensive, sorry, but then it was even more. Do you know what I mean? This wasn't a trip you made every year or something like that. So yeah, my mum experienced the loss of a partner.
So yeah, I can't imagine how difficult that was to lose a partner, especially when you never got to see them again. And in years gone by, me and my mum, we went to Antigua, um, and my mum was actually asking about, if they knew of her partner Will's, and this is like, maybe 25 years later. So I know that must have had a real big impact on my mum. But my mum's one of these that she's not super emotional around me. She's quite guarded. And yeah, she's always been really, really strong, a very strong character to me. And yeah, it's only in these little moments that we glimpse that our parents, they might have their own kind of emotional turmoil, or, things that are going on that is quite upsetting. But again, being the parent, they hide it from us often. And, that's why we have to be quite understanding that, these were once young people themselves that have grown up and been faced with situations that we all face that can be quite devastating. So, yeah, that leads on to my mum's next part of her story.
And it just so happens that my mum got with one of these Caribbean guys from Antigua, and she ended up having me. Unfortunately, they didn't stay together very long. I think they probably weren't together when I was born. But my dad was always around in the background, coming to see me on birthdays and stuff like that. So it's weird, that cycle, that obviously my grandma ended up a single parent through a certain circumstance that no one could control. And then my mum became a single parent. So that was a little bit of like history repeating, maybe for my mum to feel that, oh, I've got to do this as well. So that's part of what she experienced. Obviously, you can see what your parents experienced and see what impact that had on them. But for my mum, I know what impact now, being older and understanding things more and how my mum has been, that kind of set her up for more of a kind of, I always called it like she's a very much of a worrier and she's very anxious about things. So if anything happens, she's kind of thinking the worst case scenario a lot of the time. And yeah, that can be seen as quite protective and quite responsible. But for me, it was sometimes a bit over the top. And we've had great conversations about this that, didn't always end that well, because I'm getting to the point of you need to be more free will and, kind of do things and just try them out, regardless of what the kind of downfalls are or what the kind of dangers are. And my mum's more steering towards the air of caution and, should you be doing this or shouldn't you be doing this? So, yeah, to say that, then that impact that can have on me being a new dad, I can kind of understand how the anxiety can creep in. So I can worry about my son, and normal things, obviously, like his first day at nursery, I can worry about how he's going to get on and how he's going to fit in. Or when he gets his, first time he's poorly, is he going to be all right when he's sleeping at night and, he's breathing heavy? And there's all these kind of things that come up. And I do feel that certain traits have come from my mum. They might have even come from, like I say, my ancestors, my grandparents, my great, 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 great grandparents. But you can see how it feeds into things. And like I say, for me though, I also, obviously everyone has both their parents involved. So even though my dad wasn't around, I know that I've kind of inherited some of his traits and his kind of past as well. And that has led me more on a kind of, maybe I'm a little bit more distant, because I know my dad, obviously being my dad and not being around, he must have had a level of distance in his life. And when I've spoke to him with my other siblings, we got to learn that his dad wasn't around for him. So I'm not saying that necessarily justified it for him, but that led on to that repetitive behavior of him not being around for all of his kids, because he has a few kids, and he's kind of been the same way with all of them. He's not really been there. He's been like an absent dad. So, you know, that could make me feel that way, being a little bit absent sometimes. And I'm not that way. Obviously, I'm around for my son and I'm in a relationship with my partner. So we've kind of overcome that hurdle of the family history of like things not working out. And there can be a number of factors why things don't work out. It's not always between them people. Like I say, it could be the external pressures of what's going on in the world, recessions and all this kind of modern living and having no time and all that. That can all get in the way as well. But just to say that, yeah, like I say, on a final kind of note, if you can find out your parents' history and see how it affected them, and speak to your parents and find out your kind of family history, and it just kind of gives you a bit of a foundation for where you've come from. And then obviously you can look into how it's affected you, and it might be in a positive way. Your parents might be really, outgoing and educated and I don't know, say entrepreneurship and all this kind of stuff. So they've given you really positive things, or they might be into music or sports and they've kind of instilled that in you. So yeah, there's a number of things that which way it can go, and it can be for a good, for a benefit, and going the other side of a detriment to your development. So yeah, just speak to your parents and think of it as a kind of exercise to have a greater understanding of where they're coming from and what kind of things happened in their life and the impact it had on them. And use that as maybe a kind of guide for where you're heading in life and the kind of things that you notice about yourself, which is kind of repeating itself in the family chain or in the family history. And you can work on them things, whether they be good things or not. It's just a way of improving your understanding. So yeah, I'm sure you'll get a lot from it. And like I say, as I've tried to understand my family history more, I've got a greater and deeper understanding of, for me, where my mum was coming from with the way she was sometimes, and the way she viewed things sometimes. And it's just all about being more considerate and more kind towards your parents, to know that they were once young people. We don't see this often in older people, whether it's our grandparents or our parents or even teachers growing up, that they are just normal people and they are vulnerable and they have insecurities and they have things going on that maybe we can help with. A lot of people, I know, they see it as like the adult should look after the child, but there is an element of like collaboration, that the child, not only can we look after our parents, especially later on in life, but we can help each other with things, get through things and basically help each other through this life together. And that's what family's about. So yeah, I hope you can do that exercise. Like I say, if your parents are there to speak to, brilliant. If not, speak to extended family or people that knew them, friends of the family, and just try and get a deeper understanding of where they were coming from and what they were going through and why they are the way they are. Because we all try and understand ourselves more, but we don't always take the time out to understand other people and see it from their perspective. So yeah, that's it for now, guys, on the human experience, and I'll catch you next time.